Hello and welcome. We're here today doing our series on entrepreneurial education, and today our topic is rethinking risk. I'm Paul Porter, professor at Sonoma State University.
And I'm Mark Nelson, entrepreneur in residence at Sonoma State University.
We're going to cover several things today. We're going to talk a little bit about how we define risk. We're going to have a segment on win-lose versus win-learn. We're going to cover the topic of retirement, some coverage on fear and how does fear play into taking risks. And we have a concept called the river, and finally we're going to end with hide and seek. So let's start with kind of defining or redefining risk and why it's important. We felt for a long time that an entrepreneurial skill is the ability to think about risk differently, to, in a way, see risk as its own reward. So, Mark, could you talk a little bit about risk reward?
Sure. So risk really works on a continuum. And the more exposure that you get to risk and taking intelligent levels of risk, the more you understand risk. And fundamentally, risk, as for lack of a better word, is almost like an immunization. The more you take it, the more you get comfortable with it, the more you're prepared for the next step, the easier it is to navigate between worlds, the more you can kind of get a juice out of doing things that historically might have been a little uncomfortable. Frankly, I think it's those things, Paul, in life that really add a little discomfort to you, and when you overcome them, that are the greatest learning experiences. Those things that we do repetitively, that come easy to us when we stay into our own maybe isolated and comfortable worlds, are, I think, really less educational opportunities for us as individuals. So the risk and the reward basically means you're going to learn, you're going to gain new insights, you're going to navigate into new worlds, you're going to be increasingly comfortable with an understanding of when to take risks and when not to take risks.
Is there like a continuum of risk in your opinion?
Well, yeah, and interestingly enough, I think some of us can get paralyzed when we have to take risks. We get paralyzed by fear. And then there's others who can be reckless when it comes to risk. And I think really the beauty of understanding risk as the reward is you gain an understanding of A, where you fall on that continuum, or where your body of students may fall on that continuum, or an individual student falls on that continuum, and allow them to move one way or the other. If they're too reckless, you fall down a few times in life, you scrape up your knees, you learn something about that. You put your finger on the fire, you learn something about that. On the other hand, if you don't put your hand close enough to the fire, you may freeze, you may get paralyzed. So it's this understanding of kind of a risk thermometer, so to speak, that allows us to really gain, grow, and take on new challenges and new experiences.
Yeah, and as an educator, I just constantly think that our schools are not doing enough to, not just to teach about risk, but to almost welcome risk.
Absolutely.
I think we just need to do a lot more of it, and that's one of the areas we'd like to emphasize in today's session. I have a cool quote here that I found. This is from the book on creative confidence, and you'll see it appearing on the screen as I read it. A widely held myth suggests that creative geniuses rarely fail. Yet, according to Professor Keith Simonton of UC Davis, the opposite is actually true. Creative genius, from artists like Mozart to scientists like Darwin, are quite prolific when it comes to failure. They don't just let that stop them, they use it. His research had found that creative people simply do more experiments. They take more shots at the goal.
Well, in fairness to the educators, I think that we have to create an environment. We have to create an institutional structure that promotes risk-taking, intelligent risk-taking, provokes it, promotes it, allows it to occur, allows some failure to happen. You know, one of the words that's thrown around time and time again is standardization. Well, we know we have to have standards. We have to have some level of standards, but we also have to have enough openness where educators and students alike have the opportunity to explore, take on some new things, take on some new challenges, take some risks, and let the chips fall where they may and learn from those things and create new environments and new experiences so that we can all grow and proliferate.
Again, I just don't think we do enough of that in the schools. I think the typical mindset in schools and perhaps even in many businesses too is we're thinking win, lose. DeWitt Jones, a National Geographic photographer, talks about win, learn, and I think you've even got another term that you've used from time to time.
I forget what the term is, but I will tell you this. Look, this problem exists not just in the educational system. This exists in corporate culture. If you talk to many of the top CEOs around Northern California, which I have the good fortune of doing, they are confronted with these same sort of things. They want their employees, they want their workers to take more risk. And yet, for some reason, they feel institutionally shackled. And so, first of all, it's perception, and then there's a reality that the structure dampens the enthusiasm for risk, increases and elevates fear, and fear-based thinking is really in contrast to taking intelligent risk.
I just remembered the term.
God, thank goodness.
Good thing I've got a mind
Thank
here.
you.
Lose, learn.
Lose, learn. Oh, yeah. Failure.
Win, lose, win, learn, and you came up with lose, learn.
Well, thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The reality is,
He's quite old.
is that, if I look back on my life, which I'm almost 52 years old now, and I've been pretty blessed, Paul. I've had some good successes and many failures. Some in sports and some in life and some in profession and et cetera, et cetera. But the greatest, most profound learning experiences for me came when I failed, where maybe I didn't get the win, where I lost. So because in those cases, you have a chance to really regroup, evaluate, make some level of assessment of what went wrong and what went right, and then you teach yourself new ways of adapting to the environment in the future or creating the environment in the future. Frankly, when you win the championship, you celebrate the championship, but you don't really go back or you win the big deal. You don't go back and say, oh God, what got us this and got us that. No, typically we're pretty clinical. We get hardest on ourselves. We will do the most amount of exploration when there's been a little suffering involved. There's been a little challenge involved. So that's what we talk about when we talk about lose, learn. And I'd like to say maybe it's live, learn. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's where that fear-based stuff comes in. If everything's based on fear, avoidance of anxiety, you're not going to be in this mindset that you're talking about.
No, in fact, I would argue that a little bit of anxiety is a good thing. When you get in front of a camera like we are right now, you got little butterflies working up. You're thinking about what you want to say. You're trying to prepare all the words. But the reality is that little bit of anxiety helps you be on cue. It helps you think about things intelligently. It helps you formulate your thoughts in a way you typically wouldn't do. Now, if I'm so fearful of the camera that I won't look at it or I won't be myself, and I stop up like this, I'm not giving anybody anything. So there's this fine line between using some level of fear and anxiety to your advantage and recognizing it's there and stare it in the face, making it your friend, and allowing it to shackle you, allowing it to put you in prison, so to speak.
I teach adults a lot, and sometimes I do an exercise where I ask adults, do a timeline of where you see your life going, what your goals are, and it scares me sometimes because I see so many adults, they have retirement sitting out there. And the last 20 years of their life is working towards retirement. And I know as we've talked, you use a concept called retirement. And to me, this is an example of the opposite of risk-taking and pushing.
The thought process behind retirement is to really look at life as a building block and to look at what we've coined building a life portfolio, and that your contributions, your relevance goes into perpetuity. And as you become wiser and maybe more financially sound, and that you don't have to work for economic reasons, you can start thinking about the ways that you can be of service in ways perhaps that you hadn't thought of before. So we talk about repurposing, we talk about re-engineering, we talk about redefining, and we think of life as this lifelong process of contribution and hopefully reward. But it's not an end game, it's not a project base. You know, frankly, the days, and we've said this before, the days of working for the same company, doing the same thing the same way, are 2 decades ago. So why not find a way to create a myriad of experiences that build this life portfolio, the skill sets and experiences that take you on past what was the traditional retirement age into a repurposing era, a redefining era. We see it happening all the time. Frankly, there's a whole host of other social and political and economic reasons to do it as well, but actually it's good for the soul. It's good for the spirit. You know, who wants to sit around with a remote control and a 6-pack of beer every day, or sipping a Mai Tai on as good as it sounds, sipping on a Mai Tai on a yacht or wherever the heck you are, on a small boat, or sitting in your backyard, wherever it may be? That's not what it's all about, man. It's all about, what can I do to make a difference going forward?